telling some stories from the field. Jeremy, you were in Japan for 3 months with your family.
Yes, I was. Yeah, we went to Japan. We were trying to get there for a while. They finally opened up for business visas. We got visas. So me, my wife, Rebecca, our 5-year-old, our 2-year-old that turned 3 while we were there, and our 1-year-old went and worked at Sano International School about an hour and a half outside of Tokyo in Catch the Fire, Sano. Had a great time, made so many friends, made a lot of memories, and we're basically like 6 days a week, morning to night. It was a very busy schedule. Becca did a lot of teaching. She did English classes and reading comprehension and first and second grade. We filled in for some teachers who normally it's like they get there in the morning, they greet them out of the car, they go to class, they go to lunch. They do everything with the kids. So we did some relief work for them, and then we were able to build a little production studio, podcast and video studio for the church that does a lot of Japanese ministry leadership training. Found out while we were there that resources in Japanese are fairly rare. So there's a very small amount of books that are translated into Japanese from what we would consider normal resources here or ministries. So what they do there is really cool. They put out a lot of content every month, just training leaders all over Japan. So that was great to be a part of. And then we got to see a lot of the country. We drove a lot. Actually, I just got the bill for the tolls like 2 days ago. It's a lot. We'll talk about that later. The unforeseen expenses when you go somewhere for 3 months. But yeah, so we got to see a lot of Japan. If you haven't seen any of the vlog, I did a weekly vlog. I still have 2 that I haven't done because I haven't felt like it. But if you get on my Instagram or my wife's or even Far-Flung's, you can see a lot of what we did in the trip. It was crazy traveling with 3 kids. And
tell them about having to quarantine and the time change.
So it was a 13-hour time change. It took us 28 hours to get from our house to our host home's house. We stayed, we had a wonderful host home, a wonderful host. We had 2 rooms upstairs and a mini fridge and no air conditioning, and like the bathroom was just downstairs with the 3 kids, and it gets hot in Sano. I'm just let y'all know, we've been in a lot of hot places. I was there in June, and it was deadly. He's Duncan shaking his head. I don't know what it is about there, but it was super hot. Apparently, it's like the hottest place in Japan. It's always in the national news there, like, oh, Sano's hot again. So Sano, yeah, there you go. But yeah, so we traveled the 28 hours, got there. And then when we got to Japan, the worst part after the 15-hour flight with 3 kids who hadn't had a hot meal in like the whole day, we had to go through the gauntlet of the airport in Tokyo where we had to do more COVID testing. Oh, it was terrible. Then you had to sit and wait to make sure your COVID test was negative. And it was 2 hours of lines and paperwork and handing people paperwork, answering the same questions. Luckily, you don't have to do that now, but when we went, you did. And then once we got out of that, we had to go into quarantine for 3 days with our kids in a new house and trying to figure out things that they would eat. So that was great. That was fun. And then what was really cool about it is the day we got out of quarantine, with no tourists there because the country's still very much shut down after 2 years. The day we got out was the day where they basically celebrated the cherry blossoms. And they were out under the tree. So we go from 28 hours of travel and then 3 days in a cave with our children and then walk out to one of the most like beautiful natural wonders in the world. And I was like emotional mess the whole time. Like, look how beautiful this is.
He hadn't seen the sunlight.
The beard and just
So,
sackcloth and
it's
ashes.
very, 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 very
Like
real.
all like eyes squinting.
What year is it? The blossoms are in bloom.
Christian, you went to Ecuador this summer and led a team. And your husband has been to Ecuador before, but you got a unique experience.
Yeah, so it was my first time leading, and if you ask Kyle, what trip should you go on if you've never been on a mission trip before, Ecuador is often the one that's suggested. It's a more comfortable trip. And so I'm like, this will be great. So the day before we leave, our other leaders, Amanda and Jonathan, reached out to me, and they were like, hey, just so you know, there's some riots going on in the country. Some of the roads are shut down. There has been some violent protesting. We're not panicking about it. We don't want anybody to get worried, but just be praying, be aware. And so we're like, all right, well, we're signed up now. Let's do this. So we get there, and the rest of the team comes in from Miami, and we end up sitting at the airport for somewhere between 6 and 8 hours because all of the roads are closed around the airport due to these protests. And all of these flights are still coming in, but nobody can leave the airport. Everybody is just trapped in the airport, and Jonathan is at one point in, I'm sure, the most love, going off on the officials at the airport, like, why are you still letting people come in? We are all trapped here. It's like we're packed into these tiny spaces, and nobody can leave the airport. And finally, we figure out a way to get out, and as we're driving to Panda Vida, there's still this concern of what are the roads going to be like? Are there still going to be violent protests going on? And there's burning trees laid across the road, these huge mounds of dirt that have been piled up, and we're just like, well, we avoided the worst of it. So we finally got to Panda Vida, and we had an amazing time. About halfway through the trip, though, we were still getting the updates on what was going on around us, even though we weren't really seeing it where we were at. About halfway through the trip, all of the flights in and out of the country got canceled. And so we're also sitting there like, okay, how are we gonna get everybody back home? People have families to get back to. What are we gonna do? Gabe, my husband, is sitting there trying to figure out ways to fly into Colombia and come get me. He's like, we're getting you home. And around that time,
Jansen literally's like, I got 2 vans ready, gassed up in Colombia.
Yeah.
And I was like,
it's a little extra. I mean, we're not going that route, but around that time, I found out I was pregnant and didn't share that information with Gabe at the time because I'm like, well, if I die here, it's probably best he doesn't know, right? I'm dead serious. I was
Savage, bro.
It really was. I was at peace, but there's this sense of you could die on the mission field. It does happen. It is not all comfort. And so,
Died in Far-Flung.
no, please don't let this discourage you.
It happens to other people at this point. No one's died.
So anyways, then the day we're supposed to leave, the whole trip was amazing. It was so smooth after that. But then the day we were supposed to leave, our bus driver was supposed to get there at 4 a.m. so we could get to the airport before the protests began around 6 a.m. 4 a.m. rolls around and he can't get to us because the roads are already blocked. And so Jonathan's on the phone with the embassy and they're like, do not leave. We cannot ensure your safety if you leave. And we're like, let's go for it. So we get in the bus and we're just trusting.
a school bus.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, like a passenger van. Okay. Because you can't that was another part, you can't take any of the vans that say tourism on the outside. That's what we took to get there and everything was fine. But then the next day that tourist bus was attacked and bricks thrown through the window because they know that they can rob tourists. So we were in this kind of incognito passenger van and just really trusting that the driver of this van knew the ways to get around the roadblocks and get us to the airport, and he did. And then everybody else with the team, Jonathan and Amanda stayed at Panda Vida for the next 4 or 5 weeks, and everybody else in the team left to go back to Miami. So I was sitting in the Ecuador airport by myself for about 10 hours. Then it all hit me. I was like, oh, yeah, we really could have actually died. Like, this was actually very dangerous, but we made it by the grace of God, and it's crazy looking back on it.
Ecuador has always been one of those like constantly stable countries. There's not been like revolts and revolutions, and so this was like such a random occurrence.
Like whatever that your baby's name is gonna be, like just want you to know you were there, and your mother is willing to sacrifice your safety to spread the gospel, right? Carry that mantle with you, child. Which camera are we on? That's your heritage right there. You almost didn't meet us. Yeah.
Sam, you traveled to Mozambique this summer.
Yes, I did. Everybody good? Yeah.
Can you say Gumbani?
Gombani, what that is. If you don't know what Gombani is, you should go. It's great.
Okay, let me explain what he's doing. Gumbani's the name of the village, and he just thinks it means everything. So if any situation, he responds back and says, Gumbani.
And I always get a response back from the people there, so it works. It works.
I'm like, can we tell the Facebook story or not?
You can tell whatever, I don't care. What's the Facebook story? I don't remember that one.
No, I won't. Okay.
I don't remember that one.
He was on this Gumbani kick, and Joyce.
Oh yeah,
Joyce
share
posted
that.
a bunch of
You can
pictures.
share that.
This was just such a beautiful trip, all this stuff. And Sam wrote on her Facebook comment, said, Gumbani, we love you, Mama Joyce.
You
And
can share
then
that.
Google Translate, he put Gumbani, and it says see translation. And I was like, I clicked, what did it translate? Gumbani to? And it translated, it says go to hell. So when you look at her pictures of her impactful journey, he says, go to hell, love you, Mama Joyce. And he told everyone he met
I bet you did get
that. So you got to respond.
What's funny is our church had went, so every picture everybody did, I'd put that on the comments too.
Right.
And so like it was.
Terrorized everyone.
Yeah, so pray for me. My reputation now. So.
He's not at that church anymore.
Yeah. So Mozambique? Talk a little bit about it.
Talk about how you caught a house on fire.
Yeah, we did catch a house on fire. Who's been to Mozambique? Just raise your hand in the room, let's go. Mozambique we went this past year, or actually this year, sorry. And we went to the villages, need more coffee. We went to the villages and got to stay in the villages with guest home leaders, which was an awesome experience. The people had a fish head soup. There was a couple of options on the menu. My person was the chef of the entire ministry. So we threw down every night. And I mean, we had a spread each night. It was awesome. We got to cook with them, hang out with them, and just experience life with them. It was one of the best things. A part of that was staying in the guest homes and seeing the culture and the way they live. And
He and another larger guy stayed together, and I asked Sam, how'd y'all sleep? Oh, son, we slept good. We slept great. And I asked the other guy, he goes, I didn't sleep good. The bed started to creak, and so I had to sleep in an upright in a chair all night, and Sam slept in the bed. And Sam didn't mention that to me.
I didn't have my CPAP machine, so I was snoring too. It was bad. So
you were cooking, and the towel caught on fire.
Yeah, we were cooking, the towel caught on fire. They would feed us till we couldn't eat anymore. And the guy that was with me, his name's TJ, and I kept telling the owner of the house, like, he needs more food, and he was hurting. He looked stuffed, like hurting. But I kept telling him, like, keep feeding him, just like messing with him. And dude, he about had to go outside and just puke. I mean, it was bad. But I feel bad about that, but it was a great experience and funny. And we talk about it now. He had no idea I did that, but it was great. And we did some cooking, and it was fun too.
I talked about that service where the youth service you did that afternoon.
Yeah, man, that was unreal. we had done a little youth service in the afternoon with the kids, and it was, man, kids showed up for that. It was powerful. The Holy Spirit just began to move. It was spontaneous. We were gonna do like a kind of a lesson activity with them, and I really felt in my spirit, no, let's go a different route. So we just completely stopped everything and began to just preach on the baptism of the Holy Spirit, and man, the Lord came. It was powerful to see the hunger in the room. I wanna say we were in there like an hour and a half, 2 hours. I mean, the Spirit was being poured out. It like caught with one kid, and this kid just completely started going around laying hands on other kids, and just, it had impacted the whole thing. It was an incredible, powerful moment. One of my favorite moments for sure on a Far-Flung trip. Yeah.
Brian?
I want to defer and go straight from the host homes experience that we had here. And I know some of the other team had some really great host home experiences. I just don't want anyone to miss the testimonies of what takes place when you get to go and stay at a host home. Maybe my roommate from college, who we shared a lot of time with.
I just want to, the last 14 minutes, I just feel like you should have that. I just want to, I think, we got to go to Gumbani this year, and we did a thing called Wild Ones Africa, which was really cool. It was a youth conference for the students there, and to watch just the students really just have such an incredible fun. They had a glow night, they had color powder, the services were amazing. I mean, it was core memory for a lot of these students, and just to see how the Lord poured out his Spirit and just really encouraged. It was great to watch their leaders get empowered, and then they really helped lead the whole thing. We were just kind of there to encourage it. So it was wonderful. But I can just talk about that. That would be a lot better, don't you think? Just to talk about. So we go to the host homes, which ours was an incredible experience. Stephen and I had. We got to spend the whole day with them, and you just saw the tenderness and the care and the love and the honoring and the hosting of these beautiful people. Like we showed up to the house, which is built out of cinder blocks, and you get there and the dirt was manicured. Like you saw, they put the effort in to make a pattern in the sand as you were walking into their home. And so Stephen and I are just like, this is incredible. And she was just so wonderful, and they were just incredible hosts. Well, we didn't get to meet her husband because he started at 4 a.m. and was driving in the city. And so he didn't get home till like 9, 10 o'clock at night, and then would wake up at 4 a.m. and do it again. And so we had church, and we got back, and so Stephen and I are sitting there. She's like, okay, it's time for supper. And so we're sitting down, and we're waiting, and all of a sudden we're just looking around going, where's her husband? Like, we still have not met him. And so he tries to walk in, and he's shirtless, but he stares at us like, why are you in my house? And so Stephen and I are like, time to go. We love Kyle, but we packing up. We are getting out. But we found out later it's because he was naked. He just took a shower, and he was trying to come in and change. And she was so unbothered. She just literally threw his clothes outside and kept cooking. And I was like, okay. So it was a real interesting transaction. So we got to meet him, and the Lord, really, we got to encourage him and pray for him. But the part that they want me to share.
Talk about the storytelling part.
Which part?
Oh, about how he was really curious.
Oh, yeah. So we were able to download Google Translate. And so when we were sitting there, he was just asking, he was so curious. And he was just asking questions. And like his first question was, what's an Uber? And so we started talking about an Uber, and he was like, oh, this is amazing. And he was really inquisitive and just asking lots of questions. And so I just started feeling the Spirit of God moving, and we were just asking him questions. And he was like, well, what are you? And I was like, well, I'm a youth pastor. And he's like, oh, wow, cool. And I was like, you coming to church tomorrow? And he's like, oh, no, I have to work. And I was like, oh, well. I was like, well, I'd love to have you come. He's like, oh, do you preach like Pastor Celia? I was like, no, I'm more of a storyteller. And so we started sharing a story with him, and he just like is like crying. It is like this moment where Google Translate is like the missionary here in this moment. And like it was such a powerful moment before we went to bed, where really the Lord just moved mightily in that home. And if we wouldn't have gone to their home, he would have never been able to have that moment because he couldn't attend any of the services.
It was real strategic too. That morning when they're assigning all of us, we're being introduced to our host homes for that night. Celia even says to our team, said to Josh and Stephen, hey, listen, I really believe there's something that you're going to deposit into the gentleman that's in that home, that he's come to church some, but we just think that there's real, and they're so excited. And at the time, you guys were too, didn't know how it would all unfold. And that's where the story ends. And there's nothing more to add, or?
That's good.
Yeah.
We'll skip it. No, it's all right. We'll skip it.
We'll skip it.
Yeah.
So it was a great opportunity.
There's more story that you should hear personally. And come to Emanate next year, and maybe.
Yeah, come to
Hear
Emanate and
hear
learn
the
about
part two.
the shishi.
Sign up for Mozambique, and you can hear it in Mozambique later. Yeah. Let's see. The Thailand trip was amazing. That was a really remarkable trip this year. Had a great group, and it was kind of funny because Kyle does all the setup for the trip, and then I get like a few printouts, and there was several times where it's like we're showing up to places, and I was like, I'm pretty sure this is the address. We're supposed to stay here tonight, and we're like, we can't get into the Airbnb place, and it was just like it was interesting to have someone else give you all the instructions, and then you just go to another country with like, hey, here's the instructions. And it was very like, if you remember what MapQuest was, right? It was that type of instructions. It was like, I think somewhere on this, I'm supposed to stay in a place, and this may be the address. So Thailand, that was a fantastic trip. Jeremy and Sonia, it was great. We were the first team into Thailand with their ministry since the pandemic. And so the church dedication there, that was very different than the other dedications that I'd been a part of. That church dedication, there were people from like, I think it was like 15 different churches that came to this church dedication. Some of them had walked like 6-7 hours to be there, and they all brought gifts. And so like the representative from each church had an envelope full of money, and they're bringing it from their church to give to this church at their church dedication. And then some of the churches had like little groups, like delegates that had came. And so all of a sudden they stand up and they start singing. And they brought people to sing over this church at this church dedication. And Garoon, who is one of the translators, man, great guy, amazing story. I think some of his story is on the Thailand film, right? He leans over to me and is occasionally translating some stuff because I'm gonna share in the service. And he says, it's so important for us to build these churches. And I was like, amen, of course it is. I know that, I'm a missionary. He's like, it's so important. And he shared this, and I had never heard it before. He said, in these villages, when the Buddhists come, and when the Hmong people come, which is another animistic religion, so when they come and they see a church with a building structure, they'll leave this village. They won't build a temple. They won't build a monastery. They won't build anything in this village when they see that there's already a Christian church. He said, especially the Buddhists, and he's smiling when he says it. He said, especially the Buddhists, when they come to these villages, they won't, because they says, the God of the Christian church is already here. And it's too much for us to try to overcome the God of the Christian church. Let's just go to a village that he's not out yet. If we find a village where the God of the Christian church is not there, then we can build a temple. And Garoon says, man, we have to build these churches as fast as we can, because once the church is there, they don't come anymore. And so the Thailand trip, I think, man, I love all the trips so much, but it's one after this year, like when I'm talking to people, I think there were some people in the lobby, I was like, you should go to the Thailand trip, right? You have to sign up and go to Thailand. It's so amazing, so remarkable. So that was just a fantastic trip to lead.
I went on the Arctic trip, and this is some of the inner workings. I think some of you have seen, we aired it before service, the music video we shot in the Arctic. Some of you were in that. We talk a little bit about that conversation. You can jump into a little bit about the conversation. We knew we were going to be on ice roads, and I was told we would have 2 15-passenger vans with 25 people. Let's record a music video of us singing about going to the unreached places while going to unreached places. So let's record it in the van. And we can just put like the singers in one van and the band in the other. I don't have to worry about the details. And so I'm like sharing this vision with you guys. I'll let you give your perspective.
So the challenge is to have multiple vehicles. We thought was 2, turned out to be 6 or something, 8. But somehow everybody record the same thing at the same time.
On an ice road.
On an ice road. Now, I will say, I think this is very important to say that Kyle's initial idea was to actually run cables between the vehicles. This is why I'm here.
But then we said, wait, there's only a sliding door on one side. I said, no, you just flip the other one in reverse.
One of them will go in reverse, the other, they'll ride side by side with cables. So this is why I have a job.
It's like a Scooby-Doo episode.
So anyways, we sat down and kind of talked about all the possibilities. And you're trying to come up with something that will work, not necessarily luxurious, but that could get the job done. So we settled on an FM transmitter that hopefully the 2 vehicles would pick up on this transmission from one vehicle. Turned out to be more vehicles. And then
we drove around Chattanooga trying it out.
Right, so then it's like, okay, so one van can press play on the track and then everybody can tune their radio in and they can hear the track at the same time it's being played in the other van, and then they can have their own cameras recording and their own microphones to field recorders in their own vans, and then they could all record the same thing. But then it was like, well, then if they're just hearing the track though, they're not gonna hear Mateo. So then I thought, well, let's just make it easy. Give everybody like a 2-way radio, and Mateo can just hold the button down and he can sing, and they can hear on their radio and they can hear him on their 2-way radio, and then they can all press record and drive and hopefully record this song. And I wasn't even there, so we were like, all of this will work in theory, but how did it actually pan out?
Well, one thing was like, I think it was the day before or 2 days before, Kyle comes so excited. And he said, listen, everything's changed. And I was like, great, what's that mean? Because when Kyle's excited, you need to be excited and scared, both. And so I was that instantly. And he's like, instead of everybody in the vans, some of our group are gonna fly. And I was like
they said that they had chartered a plane
Yes.
for 10 of us.
So now, whatever we have in Barrow is what we have. Like, you can't say, oh, we're missing a cable. We need to go to Guitar Center and grab a cable. There's no cables. There's nothing there. Like, they save the duct tape from the boxes and roll it back up so they can use it again later. So now we're like, okay. And so we get a list of lists. These are the people who are going to be in the plane, and this is how we're going to do the plane. And at first, I'm thinking that somehow the plane is going to have to FM transmit to the vans.
Or cables.
Or cables, right? So we get everything figured out, and then they come and they tell Kyle, hey, listen, everything's changed again.
Literally, I checked with them. They're like, yeah, that's the plan. And then as I'm getting up and saying, okay, so some of you are on a plane, they're in the back going, no plane.
No plane.
No plane. I was like, no plane? No. Oh, sorry. Okay, we're all going to be in vans. They're like, 8 trucks. I was like, we're going to be in 8 trucks.
Yeah, so there wasn't vans, which the vans could never have made it on those roads. Why we ever were told that there were vans. So now we're in 8 trucks. Our truck had a vocalist, a drummer, and a keyboard.
In the back seat.
In the back seat of the truck, right? And then somebody, I think Wooters was up front with the camera, turned around with the camera, and we had a GoPro mounted. And we got the intro and half of the first verse. Like, we're recording, and then all of a sudden the transmission stops. But I know the song, because like we were part of writing the song. So we just keep going. Our van's like, it's just keep going. And then like, so we're going, we record the whole song, and I tell this team, I was like, listen, we killed it. We did awesome. I don't know how everybody else did. We did amazing. Until I see the recording and there's no piano in the recording. And I played the piano and I recorded the piano and you see it on the video, but it's not in the recording. So evidently we didn't kill it because it wasn't included.
How many of you have not seen this music video? Okay, I'm putting them on the spot. Hey, Chad, if you are able to, we'll end it with this. In those pre-service videos, there's a Arctic video. I think it says, "You send us Ice Road." We'll play a little bit of that as the ending, so you guys can kind of see.
There's the keyboard. And yep. Where's the drummer?
Okay, are we recording? Bryant, you ready?
Oh, I hear it. Wait a minute. We started.
I'm like 15 seconds. Hold on.
The keyboard's in there.
Are live on everything. Cameras too, right? Yes. All right, here we go.
We need to leave all the setup here.
2,